Evening. Welcome to everyone. We have some company tonight, so we're glad to see you all. A call to order the meeting of October 22nd, 2014. And we'd like to welcome Kim Saunders, who is our new administrative assistant to the school committee. And we're very happy to have her with us. And the first order of business, Kim, is that all members are present. So, thank you. Okay. Our next item for consideration is the consent agenda. And,
yes. There are 5 items tonight for the consideration of the consent agenda. It includes the approval of minutes from your October 8th, 2014 regular session, as well as an approval of a field trip to Quebec City, Canada, scheduled for April of 2015. We have warrants, including R204, L10, L11, payroll warrants from 10/8/2014, and food service warrants 2A, 3, and 4 for this evening.
Thank you. I entertain a motion for items 1, the approval of minutes, approval of the field trip, item 2, and the warrants R and L. Mrs. Bonish.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes, the field trip, and the warrants R and L.
Do we have a second? Mrs. Carroll. Okay. All those in favor? Unanimous, Kim. Okay. Our second item would be the warrant, the payroll warrant. Do we have a motion? Mrs. Broussard?
I'll make a motion to approve payroll warrant for week ending October 8th.
Good, thank you.
2014.
Second, Mr. Moulis. All those in favor? 5 in favor. All those who abstain? Mrs. Kane and Mrs. Carroll abstain. Okay. And the last one is the food service warrants. Mrs. Burns?
So moved.
And do we have a second? Mrs. Bonish. All those in favor? 6 in favor and 1 abstain, Mrs. Carroll. Okay, thank you. All right. We're starting off tonight with our student representative report, and I'm not sure if Emma was here at the last meeting. I was not, but I want to welcome you, Emma.
Thank you.
And we're glad to see you. And we had Stephen has previously been with us, so we'd like to welcome both of you. And for the Boy Scouts who are here, this is something you could look forward to when you're in the high school. We have high school students who come, and they share with us what's happening in the high school. They get to go home and do their homework unless there's something on the agenda they'd like to add information to. We're always happy to have them stay. So we'll go on with your report.
So Wilmington High School's club, WHS, will be hosting their annual care drive on November 1st from 9 a.m. to 12 noon, and they will be collecting donations for the MSPCA. And the end of the first academic school quarter is next week, October 30th.
The annual Mr. and Mrs. WHS contest will be held on November 16th, and Wilmington High School's Model United Nations Club will be traveling to their first conference of the year at St. John's High in Shrewsbury this Saturday, October 25th.
Very nice. Anyone have any questions or comments? Okay, thank you very much. We appreciate it. Right. Our next item of business is the Superintendent's Report. Superintendent DeLay.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I'm actually going to start this evening in light of the fact that we have a student here with us, a high school student, who probably has some things to take care of back at home. I'm going to start with the MASS Academic Excellence Award. That's the Massachusetts Association of School Superintendents Award. The MASS Academic Excellence Award is given to senior high school students who have distinguished themselves in pursuit of excellence during their high school careers. Selection is based on 3-year cumulative average, rank in class, personal selection by the superintendent, and the superintendent has the leeway among the top performers of the class. I'm pleased to announce that our recipient for this year is Kevin Dunn, who is a senior at Wilmington High School. He's been selected for the 2014-15 award. And Kevin is a top-ranking student at Wilmington High School in the class of 2015. He is the epitome of the perfect student, according to his guidance counselor and staff at Wilmington High School. exemplifying the terms intellectually curious, academically driven, and well-rounded. His remarkably unassuming presence belies the force of brilliance and understated energy that Kevin offers to the Wilmington High School community. Over the years, Kevin has worked diligently to develop an academic program that challenged his abilities and stretched his intellect. He is an intensely thoughtful young man of great depth who is dedicated to intellectual growth. In addition to a nearly perfect academic record, Kevin was recently named a commended student by the National Merit Scholarship Corporation. Involvement in extracurricular life was always important to Kevin, focusing his time outside of classes to investigate enrichment opportunities that were meaningful. Over the past 4 years, Kevin has been a member of a number of organizations, including the Wilmington High School Marching and Concert Bands, the Rotary Interact Club, Students Against Destructive Decisions, and the Drama Club. However, no undertaking was more defining to Kevin's growth and personal journey than his decision to join the cross-country team as a sophomore. As a senior, he is now the fastest runner on the cross-country team, providing another example of Kevin's determination, focus, and passion. In addition, he also participates in indoor and outdoor track. His energy, commitment is impressive, to say the least. So it's with great pride that we award this Superintendent's Academic Excellence Certificate to Mr. Kevin Dunn.
These moments are moments, Kevin, and your parents, to let you know that this is what we all work for. We volunteer our time for, and we're very, very happy for you when your hard work shows and pays off, and we're very proud of you. So thank you so much for all you've done to get to this point.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, the next item on our report is the introduction of our new Human Resources Administrator. I'm very excited that, and thankful, grateful to the committee and former administration of Wilmington Public Schools for creating and supporting the creation of the position of HR Administrator. It's a significant responsibility, a significant function that has been shared amongst many of us in central office in both this year and in prior years. So having the ability to have somebody that's attending to that function, which is a large responsibility, has been really exciting for all of us. So we're very grateful to have the position, and we're very grateful to, thankful to introduce to you our new HR administrator, who is Joy Jartman, and she is here with us this evening. And she began her tenure here at Wilmington Public Schools on October 14th of 2014, the day after Columbus Day, which happened to be her birthday, so she'll never forget her anniversary date here. She has over 25 years of human resource experience in education, construction, manufacturing, and service industries. And most recently, she's worked for Ipswich Public Schools with responsibility for daily administration of benefits, onboarding, time and attendance, human resource information management and maintenance, collective bargaining agreement management, leave of absences, retirements, 403B compliance, unemployment compensation, workers' compensation, and legal compliance. So clearly she has a very strong background in HR, and she's looking forward to the opportunity to grow and develop in this area here at Wilmington Public Schools. So welcome to Joy.
Looking forward to it very much.
Does anyone have anything they'd like to say?
Thank you.
We're going to be very glad to see how this all works out. Very happy to see you.
I'm busy already, so it's all good.
No pressure.
No pressure. Jesus, no pressure for you. That's good. Thank you.
We had a pile for her before she even started. So, yes, absolutely.
I kept thinking as you were listing things, Paul's over there going, oh, thank goodness, thank goodness. That's just me, I don't know. What's Paul going to do? We're teasing you lovingly, Paul.
The next item on the agenda is the NEASC update. I had included in the packet for you a letter that we recently signed on to, along with a number of other superintendents and high school principals from a large number of districts across Massachusetts. I think there were actually over 50 Massachusetts school districts represented as signatories to this letter. I'm sure you're all familiar with NEASC, the New England Association of Schools and Colleges, and there's been an effort in place for the last year or so amongst a group of superintendents and high school principals to really work with NEASC on updating their accreditation process. The feeling was that there needed to be some revisions made to the process to be more reflective of the standards that are currently in place and in the way that we currently operate high schools in the 21st century learning environment. NEASC has been very receptive to the efforts of these superintendents, and the advisory committee that was formed has expanded their outreach to other communities and other school districts to sign on to this effort. So I thought that this was really a great example of how we collaborate with other school districts as well as these types of associations to try and improve the processes and work together to be able to do that as a team. So NEASC has been very receptive to these efforts, and I thought it was important that we signed on to this effort, which is what we have done in terms of this letter. So I will continue to keep you updated as we move forward. And in fact, I did receive an acknowledgement letter, which we'll include in your next school committee packet today. I got a letter from NEASC just thanking us for our letter and acknowledging that their desires to continue to work together as a team to update their processes and procedures around accreditation.
Does anyone have any questions or comments? No? Okay. Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is the personnel report. This is as of October 15th, 2014. You can see the transition that has happened since the beginning of the school year. All of the positions that you see here that have been vacated and filled have been the result of resignations, with the exception of one position, which is actually a new position, which we just introduced, and that's our HR administrator.
Any questions or comments?
So there are two that were not replaced. I'm just curious why or...
The position for the IT technician, they're actually in the process of searching for that position currently, and the same is true with the reading specialist at the North School. Yeah, given the date of those resignations, they're still in the search process.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Next item on the agenda is an update on the superintendent's entry plan. I provided you with a memo that details the activities that were included as part of the entry plan process, as well as the status of those activities as of October 15th of 2014. I will say as an overall comment that I think this process has been extremely helpful to me transitioning into the role. I think that the variety of activities, whether it be individual meetings, group meetings, staff focus groups, parent focus groups, even this week I had the pleasure of attending a parent coffee at the home of a parent with a group of parents, and that was a nice setting to be in as well. But all of these activities have really helped me to learn about Wilmington Public Schools and our school community. And I feel that it's really helped me to understand where our strengths are, where the areas of concern are, and certainly I've had a lot of feedback. There are definitely some common themes that are emerging through the conversations that I've been having with different constituent groups. And the review of all the documents have certainly helped to support the research that I've been doing as well. And so in the final page of the memo, you'll see that I have detailed for you some of the themes that have been emerging as I've gone through that entry plan process, and certainly we'll continue this process through the end of this month. There are a number of activities that we still have to do and to complete. It may actually spill over into early November, just with timing being what it is, but The majority of the activities are either completed or in progress, and like I said, I feel strongly that this has been important piece of my transition into Wilmington Public Schools. And the common themes that are emerging, I think, are things that I think when I have conversations with school committee members, when I have conversations with the district leadership team, everybody seems to feel that, yes, these are definitely the types of things that we felt as a district that we should be working towards and working on. So.
Anyone have any questions or comments?
Where you are in the process already, I'm like, wow.
I did, when we're talking about visiting classrooms, are you able to do you mean that you've gotten into all the classrooms?
I have gotten into every single classroom at least once in the time that I've been here, yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's impressive.
That is impressive.
Yeah, that's wonderful. The other thing is on the last page, which the activities, et cetera, that are beginning to emerge are really interesting. And we've just been getting something, I'm thinking it was through the Mass Association of School Committees blog, about the new Department of Education, the new people on the Department of Education, and how, it's from Tracy Nowak, and bless you, from Worcester. She's really, really right up there. And they're going to try to get school committee members to attend their meetings on a regular basis, and different people from the school committee go, because they're saying for the first time, there's real discussion going on at those meetings. And these are the kind of items that they're talking about. So I think that's very hopeful that they're taking this, they're not rubber stamping. They're really looking into it. And one of them is the assessments, which we're going to talk about later. And that's one of the big things they're doing right now, is the number of assessments we're expecting the school departments to observe and to use. Yeah, so I think this is, we're right in there with everybody else, so that's good. Thank you. That's excellent. Thank you, Mary.
Sure. And that was a perfect segue to the next item on the agenda, which I'm actually going to ask our Assistant Superintendent, Dr. Kate Burnham, to give you an overview of the district assessment report that she's pulled together for you.
So I started with a brief introduction as to why we do assessments and why that's important to the work that we do. And you can see in the graphic that I provided in the report that data use is part of a cycle. It's tied to assessment, it's tied to curriculum development, it's tied to instruction, and that's all of it related around the standards. Those are the standards that are provided to us by the state. As you can see, as that cycle is ongoing, constantly ongoing, there are different stakeholders, if you will, that engage in different areas of the cycle. But ultimately, it all works to provide a foundation for decision-making, identifying alignment gaps, identifying learning gaps, and from there, we can use that information to build our district improvement plans, our school improvement plans, and ultimately, this information will also feed into the development of the next strategic plan. And then I provided you some brief synopsis of the different types of assessments that we're doing. I started with the one that we're all most familiar with, which is the MCAS. The Access is the state assessment that's given to students that are English language learners. It replaced the old MIPA test, and it's aligned with the new WIDA standards. Then we move into the Mass Kindergarten Entry Assessment. That's new for us here this year. It's a fairly comprehensive assessment of students at the kindergarten level based on observational data. AIMSweb is a reading assessment that we've used in the district for, I think, 4 years at this point. And we use that assessment grades K through 3 largely as a screening tool and to help us identify students in those tiered levels for tiered instruction and intervention. But we also use the Fontes and Pinnell benchmark assessment as well to further diagnose, if you will, the specific challenges, the elements of reading that the children are struggling with, to help us identify which sorts of interventions students need. Then we toggle back to the Ames web. Once those interventions are identified and put in place, Ames web can actually be used weekly with a 1-minute assessment to monitor progress that students are making with the intervention. Then we have our district determined measures that we all worked so hard to create last year. What I can say about those, when we set out to do this work, I framed for the teachers in the district and other non-instructional staff in the district to find a way to measure the impact that you want to have on a child's growth given your role. People who become phys ed teachers are passionate about students developing healthy, lifelong, physically active lifestyles. How do you measure that? That's what I asked them to think about. So largely, they were already doing assessments that they could use, but we needed to be sure that these assessments were not just of a student's performance. These assessments had to measure growth over time. So many of the assessments are just a reframing, if you will, of assessments that already existed, although there are a few departments that created some fantastic new assessments. As one example, the math teachers here at the high school created a rubric to measure growth of students in the mathematical practices. Those are the standard, they're additional standards, if you will, skill-based standards that are embedded in the Massachusetts Common Core framework. Those 8 practices are universal, pre-K through 12. And to, get to that level of developing a rubric to see growth in a student's mathematical thinking over the course of a year is pretty impressive, quite honestly, and I don't think that anybody else is doing something like that. So a lot of the assessments that have been developed have been very, very impressive, but they're all administered in the context of the normal course. Mm-hmm. We've always given unit tests or mid-years or final exams. All of these assessments are going to be just part of the normal course. Again, many of them just a modification of things that had already been in place. We do have math benchmarks that we've been doing for a number of years, and this is actually the 3rd year that we're doing it at the 6 through 8 level, but we've been doing it for several years at the K through 5 level. Those occur 3 times a year. There's, at the elementary level, a window of time for the teacher to plan to deliver that assessment in the normal math block during the course of their week. We do plan more strategically at the middle school level so that we can administer that test in a way that supports a longer period of time for the students to take the assessment, where the instructional blocks at the middle school are so short. So we do pick one day at the middle school level for each benchmark to be administered, because we do make some slight adjustment to the schedule for that day to allow for about an hour's time for the assessment. And ELA benchmarks, again, these here are being used as district determined measures, but the secondary English teachers worked together to figure out what do we want to assess with our students. And they kind of toggled between, do we want to assess writing? Then they came back to, it's really comprehension. When you come and you look at the data from MCAS, that's where our struggles are. It's that close reading, what's the significance of that word in that passage, being able to support your answer by using text evidence. So the English teachers at the secondary level decided to use an assessment more like an MCAS model, where they provide a passage of text. There are a handful of multiple choice questions about the passage, and there'll be an open response question about the passage. And as the year progresses, these assessments build in complexity, so that by the end of the year, they might be given 2 passages, different types of genre, and they have to make comparisons across the 2 pieces of text as they answer questions, both multiple choice and the short answer. So these are the broader based, I could have given you a great big long list of the assessments that we do as final exams or mid-year exams and writing assessments that are done at the secondary level, but it would be a rather lengthy volume. So these are the broader based assessments that we're doing in the district. And again, you have a copy of a calendar that's just the assessment calendar. Again, where you see those long spans, that doesn't mean that the kids are being tested every day within that time frame. That means that there's a window of time that the teacher can select to set aside, this will be a good day for me to do my assessment. Whereas, another teacher might need another day with the students to wrap up the unit before moving into the benchmark. So there's some flexibility there. Even the state gives a window of time for districts to pick the specific days to administer an MCAS test.
Do we have any questions? Mrs. Burns.
You were kind enough to explain Ames Web with regards to it being a universal screening tool that also progress monitoring and data management system, and that you specifically say it's not a diagnostic tool. Mm-hmm. Is that kind of like a general assessment to be able to institute where in the Fontes and Pinnell benchmark assessment you start? Is that how it's used? It almost seems, I'm just trying to figure out how the Ames Web, right, how useful it is if you have the Fontes and Pinnell. I'm not quite sure of the uniqueness as to why together as opposed to just one.
So you've heard about RTI, Response to Intervention, which the state of Massachusetts refers to as the Mass Tiered System of Instruction. Mm-hmm. So the Ames Web is helpful in identifying when you use nationally normed targets. You can use state normed targets. We can set the targets. Students take the assessment, and based on their results against those normed targets, they would now be identified as Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3. Oh. The tiers help figure out, okay, this group of students does not require any intervention. They're right on grade level. Things are good. You might find in the next tier, those students need a little bit of intervention and support, maybe through differentiating instruction in the classroom, maybe a little bit more one-on-one support in the classroom, perhaps even working with parents at home to reinforce some skills that have been learned in the classroom. Then you get to the Tier 3. That's a little bit more significant intervention need. Those students are likely receiving pull-out services to have more intensive reading support provided, whereas the students in Tier 2 might be receiving additional support from reading specialists in the classroom, along with the teacher. And all of that is really helpful ultimately to reduce the number of students who find their way into special education. Because if we can provide effective intervention while they're in the classroom with their peer group, that's really ultimately the best way to go. It doesn't mean, though, that there won't be referrals, even with all of this information in place. Now, that helps to establish which students are in which tier grouping, but then you can go to Fontes and Pinnell and get much more detailed information about the different components of reading.
Right.
And then that helps to inform the teacher or the team of teachers that would be working with the student to figure out which types of interventions would likely be most effective for this student. Now, once that's identified, you can toggle back to using AimsWeb as that once a week, 1 minute assessment to monitor progress. We don't want to wait until the next universal benchmark occurs to find out that we've just lost 2 months of time doing something that was not working for the student. So that 1 minute a week, weekly kind of monitoring check lets the teacher know, okay, this is working, we're making progress. If we're not, after a few weeks, we have to rethink what type of intervention are we going to try, because this doesn't seem to be effective. So they really kind of work hand in hand, if you will.
But it aims to kind of targets the national and state standards.
Right.
Where
It kind of helps us
assessment-
put the
okay.
students in zones for
So we know
for
how
levels of
we are.
instruction.
Right,
It
okay.
helps teachers to set their reading groups.
Mm-hmm.
It helps teachers to differentiate the instruction in the classroom. But it's just one assessment tool that helps teachers to be more effective in their instruction.
Very good, thank you very much.
Yep.
Mrs. Bonner?
Can you give an example of a 1 minute assessment? That seems really short.
It really is that simple. It's online. The kids, and the younger ones would work with the teacher to, answer the questions and whatnot. But
Just
it's scored that quickly, and the data comes back that quickly. Yeah.
Anyone else? I had a couple of questions. Is Dibble gone?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. We had a lot of Dibbles.
Discussion about Dibbles.
Yes, and it was like we had to have it. It was, okay, good.
No, Dibbles is gone.
Caused a lot of problems while it was here, I think. I know, I think that's what we have to watch out for, that you get on the bandwagon, here's the next big thing, and I see that Jen's here. Was she here for this discussion a little bit? Is that right? I don't want you to feel like you came for nothing, so I have a couple of questions. When we're talking, Dr. Burnham had just talked about the arranging groups and things. Is that part of what your job is? Do you help?
Yeah, so one of the things that, when you get data back from an assessment, there's a couple things that you look at. One is, how can I adapt my full class instruction to better serve students? And that's Tier 1 instruction. Tier 2 is the small group instruction. So small groups, normally inside of class, differentiated instruction. And Tier 3 is the pull-out. But within Tier 2 instruction, it doesn't always have to be the kids staying in the same class all the time. Especially at the elementary level, it's easy to move them between rooms when two teachers are free. And you can get kids in the classrooms grouped with other kids who, maybe these kids need help with main idea, and these kids need help with going back and finding evidence in text. So you can look at the different assessments, understand what kids need, and then for a short period of time you can group them to work on the skills that they need. So yes, that's some of the work that I do, is help people understand not only how to use the assessments to better direct their whole class instruction, but also to make those small groups, figure out which kids need to be in each group, and then figure out if the work that they're doing with those kids is being effective. Does that answer your question?
Yes. And do you focus on the elementary, or do you go up through the middle school and high school?
I do a lot of work directly with teachers in the middle school right now, and then also in high school in English. And then I've been doing a lot of work with the district leadership team and the CTLs in the elementary schools, and they've been getting the practices in place there.
Okay. And where are you? I never asked where you're living.
Right there.
So there's three of you in there?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Oh, a good group too. Very
And
nice.
a perfect example of the flexible grouping that Jen was referring to for the Tier 2. Last year, the 5th grade team over at the West set their team goal, and as part of that goal, that's exactly what they did. They did flexible grouping. They identified which students needed help with which types of skill building, which students were really accelerated, and which students just needed some more reinforcement to maintain right where they were. And they would, during their math instruction block, one teacher would take one group and work with them on what they needed, and another teacher would take a different group and focus on what they needed. And we saw that it was effective. They got some good gains.
And as we're talking about this, it seems to me, but I could be wrong, that we're concentrating, once you get up into the secondary level, you're concentrating on English and math. And so the other areas are not as
Largely
focused
right now,
with it?
we are focused district-wide on English and math. In large part, because those are the two mainly tested areas with the state test.
Right.
But also because we need to build capacity for teachers and administrators to do this kind of data work. Right now, when Jen first arrived in the district, we really didn't have a lot of folks in a place where, oh yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. That's good, I can do that.
Yeah.
So we worked with teams of folks last year, and we started building their capacity to lead this kind of work independently.
Right.
We can't do that across all content areas and all grades because there's only one of me and one of Jen. But
very
we're
well.
strategic in selecting the groups that we are working with, again, to build capacity so that they can then share out and lead some of this work, and we can move on to supporting others in the district.
I just have to say for myself as a teacher of English, I used to kind of analyze some of the testing that went on, and it was actually under what was called English, the paragraphs were mainly science-oriented and social studies-oriented. And if the students didn't know how to read, like transfer their knowledge as how to read stories and things to the nonfiction, which is why I know I hope we still have that nonfiction push.
Oh, we have
because I
to.
think that definitely goes along with it.
Right, because I think it's at the middle grade level, it's supposed to be about a 50-50 split. The kids should be 50% spending time in literature versus 50% doing sort of informational reading, right? Journal articles
Yes,
and even textbook reading. But then by the time that they move through high school, the state is saying that shift should switch to 30% literature, which is not making the English teachers very happy, to 70% informational type reading and writing. But, there's going to be a shared responsibility to that end because all of the teachers, no matter the content area, are all working to support those reading standards and the writing standards. It's not solely on the English teachers to carry that burden alone.
Yes.
I was very impressed. I recently was at the intermediate school in a 5th grade classroom with a teacher who invited me in, and she was doing a fantastic job of breaking down how to write a persuasive paragraph. And what was interesting to me was the incorporation of science because she taught them really how to write, how to really break it down, how to develop an argument, how to revise, edit. But the question that she gave them was, which is more dangerous, a hurricane or tornado? And the piece she gave them to read was a science piece on hurricanes and tornadoes. And it was fascinating to hear the kids, and there was no right answer, obviously, but to use and learn about writing and persuasive writing, but based on a science text. So that's the type of work that's happening to be able to, yes, we're focused on ELA, but we're bringing social studies and science into that as part of that. So.
Right. So social studies and science might be coming into the English classrooms, But English is
just
also
coming
going
into
into the social studies and the science classrooms, and the math, for that matter.
Yeah, excellent. And my last question is about the parents. Are any of these test results shared with the parents? I know MCAS is, but all the rest of what we're doing, are there some that are regularly shared with them, or are there some that are never shared with them because it's really internal and it's not affecting a student grade or something?
No, the teachers are encouraged to share the data with parents during parent conference time.
Oh, okay.
I think the challenge sometimes is a standards-based report card lends itself to easy interpretation by a parent. Sometimes some of the data may not, but still where they're encouraged to at least subjectively explain, this is how your child's doing and this is how we're coming to that conclusion, even if they may not understand the numerical systems that are in place.
And I think when you were talking earlier at the end of the report, Dr. Burnham, you were saying about you could give us so many other assessments. That's what, from what I've read, that's what Margaret McKenna is very concerned about, that we're constantly assessing, and when comes the time when we're just going to start learning or, working with what we're learning. So I do hope that Jen or somebody will keep up with what that Department of Education is doing and what they're saying through the superintendent's group or through the school committees or somehow, but I think it's really important for us to keep up on, because I think change is in the air. And not that they do away with everything we're doing, but that we would definitely not get carried away with.
We're definitely sensitive to that. We don't want students to feel assessment fatigue, and we don't want teachers to feel assessment fatigue.
Exactly.
But at the same time, if we have high-quality assessments, we can get some really good, usable data that can help us provide even stronger instruction and therefore result in increased achievement. So it really needs to become a fine balance.
Yeah.
We need to continue to work on the assessments that we've developed. It's a process to make sure that the questions that we're asking are worth asking. Will they provide us information that we need to know? Or are they just questions? So we need to get to that point of being really critical about the assessments that we're building, because we don't have instructional time to waste. But if the assessments are high quality, they can give us very, very valuable information.
I think this was a very valuable discussion, and I really appreciate all the information that you've shared with us. And Jen, now I know where you are. I wasn't sure you had a spot. No, I had never heard where you were, so I wasn't sure.
Well, we'll hear more from her at the next meeting when we get to presenting the district improvement plan and the school improvement plans.
All right. I just didn't want you to have to sit there and think, why did I come out tonight? But glad to have you. So, thank you. We all set? Yeah. Thank you very much, Dr. Burnham.
Thank you. And the last item on the superintendent's report is an overview of our upcoming November 4th CIT Day. And again, I'd turn that over to Dr. Burnham.
This year's full day professional development day, we're going to model like a conference, just like the day that we had 2 years ago. Last year, as you know, we had to spend the day dedicated to learning how to work with the new evaluation system.
Yes.
Wasn't quite as much fun as having a conference model. 2 years ago when we used this model, we had a total of 9 guest presenters, and based on their availability, we were able to offer teachers about 5 or 6 choices in any one of those 1 hour and 15-minute sessions during the day. This year, we have over 20 presenters, almost every single one of them donating their time, so it's not costing us to have the presenters. And the teachers have anywhere between 15 and 17 choices in any one session. We have so many presenters that we will have extra seats available, and we'll actually be able to invite teachers from neighboring districts members of our SEAM collaborative
That was really good
to come in and take advantage of the opportunities that we've brought in for the day.
There's another connection here with the web, with Julie Kelly, who, one of the people who received one of the web scholarships, I guess, Julie Kelly, she was so excited
Yes.
about hers, and so I see her name on here, so the teachers should have a good time if they go to Julie Kelly's.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We have a lot of really excited presenters. They're really excited to have the opportunity to come in.
That's fabulous. It's always been impressive that a lot of our teachers will present to the other staff. That's really, anyone have any questions or comments?
I just
Mrs. Burns?
think that in just reading the workshops that are being presented, the diversity of the topics are just so unique. They're not kind of that dry toast type of topic. They're actually quite interesting, like reading graphic novels like The Experts, which my children with, I have a son with a language base, learning disability, his favorite form of reading and where he finds most successes are in the graphic novels piece. And I've never seen a workshop kind of geared towards that type of reading, per se. And I thought they were quite, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't want to say humorous, but very witty in some of the titles and what they target, but yet so necessary with where education is going, what we're seeing as the new way of teaching of sorts. A little.
Are you thinking about that executive function?
I am big time. Can you
A
tell
monkey,
me?
dirty dancing, and you.
There you go, very catchy title.
I think that's part of the wit. Yeah.
But it's a great opportunity for us to partner with higher ed. A lot of universities are looking to provide that outreach to K-12, and we're very happy to take advantage of that.
That's excellent.
It is.
Yeah. Thank
And
you.
of course, you're all invited
Yes.
to come and sit in on
Oh,
any of
really?
the workshops you want.
Absolutely. Plenty of seats available.
Yep, and if you think that you're going to be able to come for the day, let me know, because you'll be able to sit with the presenters for lunch.
Are they all at the middle school, or
Yes.
are they? Oh,
Well,
everyone-
we almost ran out of room.
Yes, I'm thinking that.
Yeah,
Good job.
What day is the 4th?
Tuesday,
Tuesday,
selection.
Tuesday.
election day,
Ah.
yeah. So
Sitting day.
I just wanted to just extend my appreciation to both Dr. Burnham and her Professional Development Committee. I think this is exactly the type of collaboration and teachers learning from teachers that we need to be promoting. The teachers are the experts, and I think for them to be able to learn from each other is exactly the model that we should be promoting. So kudos to Dr. Burnham and her team for putting together a great day of professional development for our teachers. I think they're all very excited, and certainly the fact that they were all running to their computers to get online to sign up for sessions as quick as possible is evidence of that.
Oh, nice.
I'll be on scalpers.
Excellent.
If we have a
Yes,
last minute
Mr. Millis.
opening and I can get to one of those, do I need to let you know? Can I just show up or to one of the sessions? Okay, good.
Very nice. All right, old business, enrollment report. October 1st.
As you know, one of our benchmarks, if you will, for data that we submit to the state that becomes a number that's utilized for a number of different purposes, not the least of which is calculation of foundation enrollment, foundation budget, Chapter 70, et cetera, is our October 1 enrollment. So we've included for you the October 1 enrollment by school and by grade level for each of our schools. So it certainly was eye-opening to me that there does, in fact, continue to be a fairly significant difference in terms of the enrollments at the, what I would say, I guess you call the north side of Wilmington, Woburn Street and North Street versus the other side of Wilmington, Shawsheen and West Street. So that's certainly something that we will have to continue to keep our eye on.
I hope it doesn't pan out to be something we really have to deal with. Anyone have any questions or comments? Yes, Mrs. Carroll.
In the 10th grade, there's 16 children out of district.
Wow.
Now, I mean, is that how many was in ninth grade was out of district last year? Has it gone up? Is it the same? No.
Yeah, I don't know. Do you have that information?
Last year, in the number that the superintendent showed you, the 3516, that may change a little bit because this has been submitted as an October 1st report, but now the state looks at it as a duplicate students. Are we counting one in another district counting the same student for whatever reason? So it'll change a little bit. But last year we had, or compared to last year, we're about 2 additional out-of-district students compared to last year. In our enrollment right now, compared to last year, excluding out-of-district students in the pre-K and K, we're actually up 7 students. But with this total picture, we're actually down 69 students compared to last year.
It's just weird in 10th grade.
I noticed
It's
that
kind of
it's
the middle,
odd.
high school. So, I know. That probably made me laugh.
Any other comments there? No? Okay, thank you. Now we have the 4 policies. Second reading and adoption of them. Okay.
These are policies that were reviewed by the policy subcommittee. So this is the second reading of these policies, including student discipline, student conduct, student absences, which were revised and pursuant to Chapter 222, which is the new legislation around student discipline. In addition, there's a policy on bullying prevention that I believe has already been discussed in the past, but this is an update to reflect some changes that were also made in this past year to that statute on bullying prevention. So I don't know if there's questions specifically on these policies.
We already had another meeting to read them. Did anyone have any questions on them, or we're all set? Okay. I'd entertain a motion to adopt the student discipline policy, student conduct policy, student absences policy, and the bullying prevention policy. Mr. Bjork.
I move to adopt the student discipline policy, student conduct policy, student absences policy, and the bullying prevention policy.
Second. Mrs. Carroll is second. All those in favor? Unanimous, Kim. Thank you. Okay, new business. The first item is the delegate to our annual convention. I saw that on the paper, my name got on there somehow.
Mysterious.
It mysteriously showed up. But actually, Mrs. Burns, being our legislative person, and she's going to be in attendance also. And she has agreed that she would be happy to represent us if that works for everybody. We could, so I'd move to appoint, I'm doing this right away so no one changes their mind. Move to appoint M.J. Burns as a delegate for the 2014 annual business meeting of the MASC annual convention. Mr. Mullis.
Do I make a motion or you want me to second it?
No, you make the motion.
Okay, I thought you just made, okay, I'll make a motion to appoint M.J. Burns as the delegate for the 2014 annual business meeting.
Okay, second, Mrs. Prasad. All those in favor? Unanimous. I'm sorry, I worded it wrong. You were right.
Can I ask a quick question?
No.
No, you're right.
It's all done.
I've only just begun, Mr. Beal. This form, this is what we have to send to MASC?
Yes.
To announce it. Do I send that in, or would, I can't remember if years past, if the superintendent sent it in. I haven't.
Superintendent sent it in.
Yeah, I think I
Okay.
sent it in on
All
your
right.
behalf, just certifying that the vote was taken by the school committee and who it is, yes.
And then our second item on this new business is the resolutions. And MJ is going to give us a little update on the resolutions.
I'll do my best to keep it brief. We have to, with each resolution, we have to take a vote as to how we you would like for me to represent Wilmington with regards to these resolutions. With the first resolution, the greater transparency and accountability for out-of-district placement costs. This resolution requires a lot of explanation by Framingham School Committee. We had met last Wednesday evening as a District 1 school committee, and the rationale is that with public monies being spent in out-of-district placements, a lot of those out-of-district placements are private schools. They feel transparency for the stakeholders is necessary, that the private schools should be held accountable, such as any public school, with regards to budgets, salaries, and things of that sort. So what they're proposing by this resolution, which I believe they will have to discuss in a little more detail, is that they're hoping that the DESE will create a site of private schools, of out-of-district schools in Massachusetts, and lists their budgets, their salaries, annual reports, etc., so that they're all concentrated in one area. So if any stakeholders are interested in looking at these private schools and their financial background, they'll have access. Currently, they're not available publicly. So that's what this resolution is proposing, is a greater transparency in those private institutions that public, districts are paying into.
So the question becomes, do we agree with that? Do we want her to vote in favor of that resolution?
On its face, I think it sounds like it makes sense, but what's the argument against?
Well, currently, private schools don't have to disclose their budgets or their salaries of their employees or annual reports. They're usually run by a board of directors, typically, but they're not required under the same requirements of public schools to do so, because they're not considered public employees or of municipalities.
But they're taking out of district placements by the schools.
But, such as, like Wilmington pays it's public money for certain students. Some of those students are in private schools. And so they'll do the same, they may have to meet the state standards and mandates that all public schools do, but this deals specifically with the transparency of monies. And nothing more.
One of the things they talked about was the fact that in Framingham, thank goodness we're not Framingham, there are 193 kids in Framingham costing $72 million for their out-of-school placement. And they can't get any records as to how much they're paying the teachers, how much they spend their money on within each of those schools, the separate schools. So that's what they're trying to have disclosure from the schools so that they can really see if their money is being put to good use. Kathleen?
Are we just voting, in the past we just voted on like 4 or 5, are we voting on, did you want to talk about all 6 of these?
Yes. We'll do them individually to discuss.
Okay, all right, because in the past we only did like 4 or something like that.
It determines how many resolutions are before the delegation.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think my concern is with, I have no problem, and that's where I'm a little uncertain, and I discussed it last week. Well, what do you do with that? It's just, okay, so this is how much they spent. There's really nothing you can do with that information. You can't go back and say, well, we're paying them too much money. Each private school, or any of the special needs schools, they all service different type of students. And to go any further than that would be risking FERPA. With, you know what I mean? How does one judge the basis? Because in the special education world, it's the potential of the child and the education of the child. And if the program is not succeeding in educating the child, then it's the program that needs to be changed, and it's not a financial reason. I have no problem with the transparency piece of what certain schools, what their breakdown is, but I don't know how that information could be useful in that realm.
I think it's just a start, Manny.
I'm sorry.
Mr. Mealy.
But this is just talking about the transparency. It's not saying that there's going to be consequences or anything like that. So I think knowing where it's going is step one. Then if you find out if there's something illegal or something wrong that comes out of it, then you make, whatever you have to do for it. But I think the transparency part is the main.
I think personally, I would feel better if he clarified the rationale to be specific to having it all listed at DESE and stop it there. And that's where I wasn't quite sure, and it required quite an explanation. This is what the thought was. Well, I didn't quite capture it in the rationale piece, and I think, I don't know where, as it stands, I have no problem with the transparency piece. I think I'm very much for that piece, but it's what one assumes they can do with that information. You can't base, I don't know with Framingham, with all that money going out to out-of-district placements, knowing it, okay, this is how much we're spending at each, but how can they utilize it,
I think one of the things, though, it says in this booklet, we've all got different booklets probably, many out-of-district placement settings are folding in non-educational costs into tuition. And it's the tuition that they're reimbursed for. So if it starts by having a report at the end of the year that at least lists everything that they're doing, that is a start. So I kind of tend to go along with Mr. Mullis that it's a good start.
They can break down the services, but they can't
Right.
speak to specific, you're talking about specific students and services. Not all students receive the same services at the same school.
Right.
So,
Yeah,
Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to note, one thing that I observed in here is there's a discussion about having them file end-of-year reports, which
Yes.
for folks like Paul and I who've been in the role of business manager has a very unique meaning, which is that we file that end-of-year financial and pupil report. We cannot get that detailed report on other school districts, or if they were to file on, we can't get specific information. What we are able to get is per pupil type expenditure comparisons from district to district, broken down by 10 or so categories, like instructional expenses, like operations, administration. So, for example, we can say, well, in Wilmington, we spend $200 per pupil on administration, but this out-of-district school, if they were reporting, or this neighboring district spends $400 per pupil on administration. So that's how it currently works with the end-of-year report, and I'm not weighing in. I just wanted to kind of offer that insight about the meaning of the end-of-year report.
That's different.
and that's what I'm nervous about. I don't mind the transparency piece. It's just that, it's just I just concerned as to, and I know that they wouldn't risk FERPA, but I don't know if the reasons behind it justifies, what they think they're going to get with regards to the proposal. I have no problem with the transparency piece, with knowing, the breakdown of the details of the tuition, but.
I think at some point, you need to know where money's going to.
You're right.
And,
That's
what the
right.
consequences are after, then, we're not talking about that piece right now. Maybe in the future, there may be some consequences based on what you learn. But I think where there's so much money involved, especially a town like Framingham, and in our case, we talked about 16 students in 10th grade, right? So, having transparency, knowing where dollars are going, I think it's not a bad thing.
I didn't have a problem with that. It's just,
So
I just
then
wish to say, clarify, I have no problem voting for it if the body feels comfortable with it.
Okay, so feel comfortable?
Do we need to take a vote as a group, or can we?
We do, don't we? We take a vote as a group?
Do you want to?
No, I'm asking, don't we?
We can't, the interesting part of this was, the other part that happens is the blog went on for a while recently about, do we give the person, some people say, all right, we're going to say yes to this, but if something comes up at the meeting and you feel that you want to make a change, you can. And other communities say, that we're telling you to say yes to this, no matter what comes up at the meetings.
There's amendments that do come up at the delegation, so
stuff,
that
so-
flexibility is
I
helpful.
think we need to give her that flexibility.
So that's what we had done the last time, so we could have a motion for this, that we would vote in favor of this amendment, but with the flexibility that, should an amendment come up that MJ feels, and I will be there too.
I was just going to make the
100%,
point
yeah.
that MJ, we're giving MJ the responsibility to be our voting member to
Right.
represent us, but there'll be 3 of us there.
Yes.
They've changed the schedule a little bit at the conference this year, so, and I think it will encourage a little bit more participation. I also wanted to clarify my own understanding. These resolutions that MASC is putting out and that we would potentially be voting on, we're saying that we're okay with, these are their priorities of what they want to work for, what they want to lobby for, what they want to fight for in the state. Correct?
This coming year.
This coming year, this is what they're going to work on.
Yeah.
By us agreeing or disagreeing with what they're saying, we're sharing what we, as a Wilmington community, stands up for or doesn't stand up for. Right. Okay, I'd like to make that clarification, also for the public that might be watching us.
Exactly, good, thank you.
Very good, thank you.
All right, so we could have a motion for this particular,
Resolution.
what's it called?
Resolution.
Thank you, for this particular resolution. Okay,
I'd move
Mr.
support for
Bishop.
this resolution.
Okay, a second? Mrs.
Should I
Bonner?
say support for this resolution pending any substantive amendments?
Good, okay. All those in favor? Unanimous. Did you get that, Mrs. Bonish was second, did you get that, Kim? I did. Okay, good.
Okay,
Well, Kim, she doesn't even know who we are, and she's like, I have to be more clear for you, I'm sorry.
Resolution 2, again, brought forth from the Framingham School Committee, talks about universal quality pre-kindergarten access in Massachusetts. Framingham, a little history is Framingham has a large immigrant, socially and economically challenged families in their district. It's a town, actually. And they're finding that a lot of younger children do not have access to preschool. So they are, by this resolution, they're hoping to create or ensure, provide services in school readiness for kids for pre-K. And there's a couple of questions that will come up at the delegation on the floor with regards to how is this being funded? Is it, and there's a request to have it pending subject to appropriation. That was suggested by the Chelmsford School Committee. The other piece is, though, too, is that with a lot of the districts in Massachusetts not yet up to full kindergarten, Chelmsford, I think, and I share her, Ms. Thorne, concern that I think we need to really target seeing more kindergarten programs go full day and trying to find funding for that piece before we consider and look at the pre-K. I think the demographics in Framingham, are valid, but I don't think that priority-wise, I think the kindergarten piece needs to be considered, it's not a part of this resolution. So frankly, I kind of, as it stands, I personally can't vote favorably for this resolution until the full-day kindergarten is put forth throughout the state of Massachusetts.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree.
I agree. When I read this, I was just going to, if this came down upon us tomorrow as an unfounded mandate, I read this and said, it sounds great on the face, but where are we going to put them?
Exactly, yeah. And how are we going to pay for it?
Well,
Right.
that's it.
And so I think it's a good idea. I understand the logic behind it, but I don't know.
Well, they were saying again, Framingham is so unique. They had 65 million documented people from other country, aliens, and 15 to 20 million undocumented.
Million?
Million?
Can't be a million.
No, not million. Thousand, I
Undocumented.
think.
She said million. 65, it can't be million.
It's a town.
65 million didn't even vote for president last.
Well, it was 65, and then 15 to 20 were undocumented, Could it be thousands? Must be
Maybe
thousands.
23,000,
That sounds
Right,
right.
thousand must
Yeah.
be, yeah.
That's it.
But also, I did talk to, I was sitting beside Glenn Kuchar, and we were talking about Head Start, because we have a very strong Head Start in Massachusetts. And that's when he was saying, he didn't say he was for or against it, but that's when he was saying they feel that we should really be looking at the kindergarten and get that settled before the preschool, because it's not like there's nothing for preschool, you know, so. I think that, do we have a motion then as to what to do with this resolution? Someone like to go, MJ?
I make a motion to vote nay on this resolution.
Do we have a second? This is Carol. All those in favor? Unanimous, Kim, thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
Resolution 3 pertains to charter school reform. Now, this has been, this is not the first time this resolution has come before. It's an active resolution from previous conventions. So it's an ongoing policy that MASC is working on, but there has been some new addition with regards to the financial impact charter schools have on public school funding. Specifically, if you don't mind me reading, is that one of the new pieces that they did add to this resolution for this year is to require the BESE to consider the social and economic impact upon the districts from which new or expanding charter schools would recruit students. As well as another new piece is the establishment of a formula for evaluating school districts that uses a growth component that is not less than 50% of the formula. And the last new piece to this resolution is the require on an annual basis the reporting of best practices and innovation to the sending school districts. You know, frankly, I'm not as well versed. I know the general terms of how charter schools impact public schools, and I know Wilmington currently risks that as well. I'm not sure what the status of the proposed charter school in Andover is at this time, but
It's gone.
oh, is it gone?
Mhm.
Well, that's good. That's good news, but it is good news.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's. I like to. I would suggest a favorable vote for this, in conjunction with the additional bullets that they've added, that were carried over from previous years.
Does anyone else have any thoughts? Do you have any thoughts about, I'll put you on the spot here.
No, I think your input is
Yeah, I
very
know.
valid to
We
how.
almost got, the closest we ever came to it was Andover's last year. They tried to do that, and the former superintendent spoke against it, and eloquently, and they said that was part of why they didn't get it, because of her comments.
Because of the, yeah.
Yeah, and how it would affect Wilmington.
Yeah, which, I mean, I think as a school, as Wilmington Public Schools, given where we are and the impact financially on our district and some of the bullet points, I'm glad to see some of the suggested bullet points, because there have been these thoughts about, you know, they can sort of select their student population and then they can suspend out those kids who maybe aren't doing as well. So I think that the proposed measures that they have to incorporating here, particularly around making sure that the expropriations from local Chapter 70 funding doesn't have a significant impact on school districts, and the other things that are in here. They're all measures, to me, they're all measures of accountability and protection for public school districts that can only serve to help us if there were charter schools that did happen to appear that these are things that are going to help us with respect to their accountability to us as public school sending districts.
Good. Oh, that's what I needed to know. Does everyone feel good about this one then? All right, we'll entertain a motion. Mrs. Brissette.
I'll make a motion that we support Resolution 3, Charter School Reform.
Second, Mrs. Burns. All those in favor? Unanimous, Kim. Thank you.
Okay, Resolution 4, fingerprinting. The basis of this resolution is, and please help me on this, is that they are, because it's state mandated, and again, another unfunded piece, they want the Department of Education and Secondary Education to take the responsibility of this mandate at the central office to hold prints there, so that there's a central office with the state educators' fingerprints. And that the fingerprinting piece be a part of the initial licensure of teachers and recertification, so that they're the ones who are responsible for that, and taking that burden off of the districts. And that they also proposing that the DESE, as it's called, should also be handled the background checks to those fingerprints. Again, taking those aspects away from the districts and putting it on them, since they're the ones that are mandating and requiring it. What I also did learn is that Massachusetts is one of the last of 48 states to get on board with the fingerprinting process. So we're one of the last states to be doing this with our teachers and educators. So I'm fully for this resolution.
They also talked about the Corey, and they were talking about the Corey cost every 3 years. So is everyone re-Coreyed every 3 years?
So we do, right now, Corey employees every 3 years, and volunteers and trades folks, anyone who needs to be Coreyed, it has to be re-Coreyed. It does not cost us, Wilmington Public Schools, anything to re-Corey in terms of submitting of the Corys. It does cost us, obviously, in staff time to fill out the forms and to submit that data. But for Corey, which is Massachusetts criminal background check data, we do submit every 3 years. The current legislation or regulations for fingerprinting is a one-time. You fingerprint once, and then as it stands currently, you do it once and that's it. But it's a fingerprinting check that accesses the national criminal database.
I had asked, and I didn't get an answer. I had my kids fingerprinted during those safety days that we used to have, so they have their fingerprints, and nobody had an answer as to whether they'd be allowed to use them if they were teachers, and could they use them and not have to pay $55 and get new fingerprints. They didn't know the answer to that.
I have my fingerprints from
Yeah.
when I was a kid. My parents
Yep.
took me to get fingerprinted.
I know, and it seems crazy. You'd have to go get another set. They don't change, but so that's interesting. MJ?
I know that when you brought that up, I think that technology, I know in the police station my husband works for, it's a digital or scanning of it now, so that it's a direct placement. But the other, I think, interesting topic that came out of that discussion pertaining to this resolution is, what if a teacher leaves one school district and goes to another school district? Is the requirement of fingerprinting all over again, because that school district doesn't have the fingerprint on file? And that's why I think feel that much more strongly with regards to this resolution, that if you had a central office, those districts can pull from DESE, so that teachers don't have to pay another $55 to get their fingerprinted because they switch districts.
Yeah, as it currently stands right now, there's a form that a teacher can fill out to basically permit a district to ask for that information from a district that they may have worked in previously. So I think that process exists right now. I don't know when they say DESE is the clearinghouse for all background checks for all educators. I will say that I think one important piece of this is that the school districts are able to access the background check information, that the decision whether or not to clear, if you will, an employee as suitable, we don't necessarily want to have DESE make that determination, but we would like to be able to have them have on file and access the information, because different districts make different decisions based on what they see in somebody's criminal background. So,
I think that in theory is the reason, but to put that pressure on them to do it so that you can pull from it.
It's a hot potato right now. Everybody's, you hear districts, you do it, here, staff, you do it, and you pay for it, and it's become a hot potato. So it would be nice if the hot potato landed in a lap other than ours or our staff's. We don't charge our staff. The state charges. That when they go to get the background check, they have to register online and pay a fee for that.
I think it's $55.
55 if they're a licensed educator and 35 if they're not.
Okay.
Which that was a little backwards. They were saying that's a little crazy.
Yeah.
You know.
Because it pertains to anyone involved with children, it could be alone with children.
Yes.
and-
Oh, it's the
Exactly.
same as the career check, the same
Exactly.
people.
Yeah, and so that in
Unmonitored.
itself is a bit skeptical as to why you're going
Wow.
to charge a license,
And would they do it through the local police station? Where do
Right
you get
now,
them?
what they have is they have terminals, for lack of a better term, stations set up, areas set up across. The state went out to bid for a vendor to do this, and the vendor who won the contract is actually a company called Morphos that's actually based in Billerica, and they have established centers where teachers can go across the state, and that number of centers has definitely grown over the past few months. For example, I, as a new employee of Wilmington, had to be fingerprinted, and I went to Billerica and had that done. So there's different centers all over the place where people go, and it's not at all associated or affiliated with police stations or registries of motor vehicle. It's a separate center where folks go, and it doesn't take very long. You walk in with your slip that you get from being online, and you put your hands on a digital pad, and it reads it, and then they send the results through, and the district gets the results.
Wow. Didn't realize that. Do school committees have to have that? We've got to think about that.
Certain members. No, I'm just kidding.
Just the chair.
That's funny. Okay, what shall we do? We have a motion? Mrs. Burns?
I make a motion for a favorable support to this resolution.
Second, Mrs. Carroll. All those in favor? Unanimous, Kim? Okay.
Need it. Next resolution deals with the reinstitution of earmarking. And this is being brought before the delegation from the MASC Board of Directors. I guess in years past, there was earmarking for schools, public and regional schools and municipalities, and which are federal funds that are set aside specifically for schools, for specific groups. It has gone by the wayside, I guess, in past years, and it's no longer in existence. And what their legislative piece of MAC is trying to do is go back down to D.C. and talk to the Congress and senators to get the earmarking funds back reinstated, which would give districts additional federal monies for public schools and regional programs.
Under the rationale, they're changing one of the words. The process of earmarking allows Congress to approve specially targeted appropriations for, and they're changing discrete to specific. So when we vote on that, it's going to be specific. This seemed to have mostly to do with colleges and universities, though they were saying. I don't know.
Well, I know that there was a discussion about limiting or narrowing what the earmark funds could be used for.
Right.
And I'm trying to recant the conversation that Jacob Oliveira, who is will be the president-elect of the MASC board, stated that you don't want to narrow down the particulars because
you don't want to limit them.
Limit them, yes,
Yeah.
because then it would open up a whole new can of worms, and it would just it wouldn't be conducive to what they're trying to do with getting additional funding for schools. But but you're right. I do believe it would be open to colleges and universities as well, any public schools and regional schools.
Yeah.
Anyone
have any thoughts about this one? This doesn't seem. This one's not. I'm not sure how much it applies to us, but I don't see anything against it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would recommend a favorable
Okay.
support.
Would like to make a motion? Really? Oh, Mrs. Bonish,
I'll
thank
make a
you.
motion to support Resolution 5, the reinstitution of earmarking.
Excellent. Do we have a second? Mr. Mullis? All those in favor? Unanimous.
And the last one more, almost there. Resolution 6, unfunded mandates, which just
yeah, no,
speaks
this is the
to,
list.
I think it's pretty self-explanatory with regards to the
Really? Oh, I missed
unfunded mandates that the state has handed down to public schools, which also incorporates the park and the development of the Common Core. And it goes on to incorporate additional state-imposed advisory regulation standards and directives. I highly recommend a favorable support in this resolution.
Here, here.
We'll take a motion. Oh, we're all voting already. Mr. Willis,
I'll make a motion to support resolution number 6, unfunded mandates and new testing.
and second, is Mrs. Broussard. All those in favor? Unanimous.
Okay,
Okay.
and lastly, Resolution 7, the assessment system in Massachusetts.
I don't have it on here. No, go ahead.
Okay.
Oh, no, I don't have that last one we just did. It skips.
I'm hoping that you may support the historical piece to this, Mrs. Kane. The Board of Directors at MASC wanted to put this before the delegation to, for the state to examine further options regarding the park testing and accountability system that currently is in place. And to also incorporate educators and superintendents and school committees in the decision with regards to accountability, state assessment, and the state assessment piece, which up to this point, we have not been a part of the discussion for this park piece. So basically, how it was told to us last week is that this will allow the Tea Party members to go back and re-argue it before our state legislators, to bring it back before the state delegation, because currently, I can't remember the reasons, but it's no longer on the floor, and this would be a re-invitation to bring it back up for discussion and to argue the fact so that school committee members, superintendents can weigh in on these decisions of the state assessment and accountability standards. They're going after Common Core again to the state. So that's what this resolution supports.
They also said that there's been limited work in updating the MCAST, which only tests 85% of the Common Core curriculum, but that tests more than I thought it did. That's what they said, anyway. It's not in the best interest of the districts, and we should expect amendments when this comes to the floor to discuss this when they think there's going to be amendments on it. And that an RFP should be out for $5 million. And that the Board of Education needs to decide and stop wavering, stop giving everybody choices. And they're basically saying, they have to say, we're going with Parker, we're going with MCAS, and get over this whole discussion.
I do see, with regards to how this resolution how it will go with delegation, between the new board at the Board of Education, this could really open up a positive piece with the Board of Education in their discussions with regards to how the state progresses with Park or the revisiting of the Common Core if they feel that is necessary. I mean, this could potentially trickle down to other conversations.
All right. So what do you think about this one?
I would.
I do too. I think we need to go, yeah. Yeah. All right, we have a motion? Mrs. Carroll?
Oh, good. So move. No. I take motion to vote yes.
On Resolution 7.
And make an adjustment on the amendments that happen on Resolution number 7.
Okay, do we have a second? Mrs. Broussard? All those in favor? Unanimous.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I know, it's hard to...
Harder than the past one. The past one you knew, you know, like...
Well, I also think these had kind of personal, because where the personal school committees did some of them. I think that makes it a little different. Well, we're not going yet, but, all right. Public comment. It was nice tonight to see we had some Boy Scouts in the audience who are learning about civic work things, so they had to leave at 8, so we're happy that they came. Other reports. I'll just say on the Division I meeting that they loved Mrs. Palin's cookies. They said to make sure we noted it, and they enjoyed coming to Wilmington. And I was impressed that Jake and Beverly from Framingham, they came here from Ludlow and Framingham. And that night wasn't a great night for driving. So it was very nice, and they want to come back when the building is complete. So
You know, wonderful discussion, though. It was
worth it.
It was a small group, but there's just so much kind of being thrown at each other, and
Well, we got the inside scoop from the head honchos.
and that's
Really?
the best part. I love getting my little info. I do.
Yeah, no,
A
that
little
was,
ammunition.
it was very good, so we'll be seeing them down at the convention. Should be interesting. Okay, we'll start with Ms. Burns and see if there's any,
Nothing to report, thank you.
okay.
Nothing.
No, okay. Mrs. Broussard?
I have a little stack, but I'll try to keep it as quick and easy as possible. So for the Superintendent Evaluation Subcommittee, at our last full school committee meeting, Mary presented her goals to us for consideration for part of her evaluation. We approved them. We met again last week as a subcommittee, and Mary shared with us this stack. It's the Part 6 Implementation Guide for Superintendent Evaluation. This can be found on DESE's website. I did not make a copy for everybody, but what I did do is take out a couple of pages that talk about what our responsibility is in terms of the evaluation for the school committee. So you can take one and pass it on. When we met for our retreat in July, and then we met again in September, Dorothy Presser was here, and Dr. McGrath were here talking about the evaluation process being a continuous cycle. Believe it or not, we're at step 3. Okay, so we're making progress here. And this is the part where it's the plan implementation. Nice segue that Mary shared with us where she's at in her entry plan. And she is in the collecting of the evidence process. And I'm going to say that again. She is in the process of collecting the evidence. What we learned in the subcommittee, and it certainly made me feel a little bit better about this process, that fortunately or unfortunately, the burden is really on Ms. Delay to share with us evidence of her work as the year goes on, and that's the evidence that we will use in consideration of the evaluation. Okay, as you read the information that I'm sharing, it does refer to the school committee members also collecting evidence and observation on their own that we will use when we do our individual evaluations. But rest assured, we are not creating individual dossiers on Ms. Delay. Okay, this is through our normal course of business. She's going to share information with us. We're going to attend the school committee meetings. We're going to read through the meeting packets as we always do. We will see her out and about at school events that we attend. Normal course of business. We should all take a sigh of relief because it's not quite that bad as we thought. So again, we're not creating a dossier on her. We're just normal course of business, looking at information for consideration. And we are also going to meet as a big group. End of January, we discussed, stay tuned for more details, but more of a retreat or a workshop style meeting where we will focus as a group specifically on the evaluation. So take a breath. We don't have to worry about it for a little while. We're in good shape. Mary is working away on her entry plan, and there you go. Okay. Any questions or concerns?
Thank you.
No problem.
Okay, Mr. Millis?
I have nothing to report.
Mrs. Carroll?
I have nothing either.
Did you want to talk about the WEF?
Oh.
When do you want to talk about the WEF?
Well, we kind of talked about that last week.
Yeah.
We mentioned it, right?
We talked about the WEF. What
Last
was
week.
coming up, they recognized their grant recipients last week. It was a nice presentation. They got some great press in the town crier. It was kind of fun to be there. It was my first time being there.
It's always a great,
Yeah.
great night. We get to see how exciting the teachers are to come back to teach. And one of the people went to England. One of the teachers from English went to England, and my child, as a freshman, is in that class. So of course I drilled him, and he said, "Yeah." He goes, "I didn't even know what we were learning. It was a lot of fun." So and his grade's great, so it paid off, so it was good. It was a great night.
I just wanted, they asked too that we really keep getting the word out because they don't have as many people apply as they would like, that they'd like to be able to give more of the grants. So it's really exciting to see them present. Dr. Burnham you're like the backbone of that in some ways,
And the STEM
helping the
fair.
different people, yeah.
And the STEM fair too, that's coming up. Yep.
STEM fair is such a night.
Yes,
Have you,
huge.
no, you weren't here
I
to
was
come
here.
by.
I will enjoy
No.
it. Yeah.
You'll
My
be
kids
so
enjoy it, too.
happy. Yes, that's an excellent project, yes.
Yep.
All right, thank you so much. We all set then. Okay, our next item would be correspondence. No correspondence. Do you want to talk about that? We're going to ask, at some point, we want to see if, we were talking originally about welcoming back parents and telling what the school committee does.
Oh, yeah.
Mrs. Burns, go ahead.
I'm going to try to do this off the top of my head. I received an email from someone I know in Newburyport, and the school committee in Newburyport sent out a letter to all parents welcoming them back. It also explained the chain of command and how much that we look forward to working with our community and and discussing the goals and seeing it's a lovely letter, but it was sent to all parents. It was sent from their administration. It was sent to the teachers as well. And I thought it may speak to what Mrs. Broussard had initially discussed back at the retreat in July. Was it July? With regards to being more welcoming and more out there to our stakeholders. And I wanted to run it by Peggy to see if she thought that it may be a good idea, and since, why create the wheel if it's already been created, and I just thought that maybe we might want to, now that it's end of October, I didn't know if it would still be interesting, or, however it needs to be rephrased to accommodate the time of the year, but I just thought it was a nice way of, again, trying to reach out to parents and staff, and just to say, welcome back, and, however you want to gear it, whether it be towards the MCAS grade and the success of the Woburn Street, and, that speak to that, but I thought it was just a nice idea, and it's just a very positive one, too. I just didn't know what everyone's thoughts were. I can email
So we were thinking that maybe the three of us could get together if we had some time, and we could put something together with Mary's help.
If everyone is amenable to that. I could send it around to you as well, just so that you can read it and give your thoughts as well.
This time of year might not be bad, too, because parents are so flooded with information right at the beginning of the school that...
Should we start it, this is not a fundraiser?
Yeah, exactly. We're not asking you for money, although if you want to donate something to
We'll have a tip jar.
Yeah.
So if you want to get together, we'll do that.
Sure, okay.
All right.
That's great.
Sounds good. Let me see. All right, now our next meeting is November 12th. We would have gone to our convention, and Superintendent Delay is going to be there too, which is exciting for us. We've not had a superintendent with us before, so I think that'll be exciting. And that's because the superintendent, if we want to go out to eat, buys something.
I'm gonna have to behave now.
Teasing.
I'm excited because I've never been accompanied by a school committee, so.
I think we benefit from it. It's such a.
It's 3 days of talking about education
And you're
all the time.
exhausted. I tell you, I can't stay awake through those dinners. They're so drawn out, and I'm like, okay, want to eat, want to go to bed. Just decompress from the days.
But it should be a pretty active convention this time, so. So we'll have that to be sharing with the rest of you on November 12th, which will be our next meeting. And then in December, we'll only be meeting on December 10th. And so we'll talk about the agenda for that when we get back. All right?
Wow, it is the
First of the year.
It's so unbelievable. Yes. I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Mrs. Broussard.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
And second, Mrs. Burns. All those in favor? Okay, unanimous, Kim. Good night, everybody. Thank you.
Good night.